You're here, which means that you've found Spirit Crumbs, leading you to your inner light worker. I will be sharing how these tiny little hints from the universe have led me to where I am today. I hope that by hearing my story and the stories of others, you'll pick up your own spirit crumbs along the way that will lead you to somewhere magical. Thanks for coming along for the journey. Let's see where it takes us. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Spirit Crumbs. I am your host, Andrea McCallum, and I am an intuitive oracle card reader and energy healer. I am talking today about the throat chakra and communication and the shadows that sometimes come up in that area, blocking us from our path. So last week we talked about the number 14 and compromise and balance. And the reason these are linked and why I couldn't really decide which one to start with is that there is this link between compromise and the idea of not compromising, and the key there is standing in your truth and really trusting yourself. And the idea that the number 5 is connected, so 1 plus 4 equals 5, so 14 equals 5, that also links these two, where I didn't know which one to start with, because 5 is the number that is associated with the throat chakra, which is the 5th chakra, as well as a few other things. I did a post about this, which I'm going to go through all of the different parts of it, the different ways that 5 is represented. But I just wanted to say that I wasn't really sure which one to start with, because in order to really be able to stop compromising, we need to be able to stand in our truth. But in order to stand in our truth, we have to see where we are not doing that, or think about why we are not doing that. And so compromise, I think, is a part of that. So I'm glad that I did the compromise first, also because it was episode 14, so it made sense. But because I think that that is a way to start looking at where we're compromising our own values and our own truth before we can really do anything about it. I feel like the number 5 is very much tied to the throat chakra being the 5th chakra, and being tied to then speaking your truth. And I think that still does resonate with the traditional numerology meaning of 5, because that's freedom and adventure. And I think when we really do start to stand in our truth is when we feel that freedom. And I think this is how I've reconciled these different meanings of the number, because I know that's what I was trying to kind of do in my post at the beginning of the year, because 2021, 2 plus 2 plus 1 is a 5. So we're really sitting in that energy this year. And that's where I think part of my feeling of just reconciliation with this, where I really want to figure this out, is the fact that my Chiron is in Gemini. And I did talk about this in one of my Card Pull Friday videos, I think last week, because for me, for some reason, it came up. It was kind of a message that came through in that reading. And I think that because communication is tied to Gemini, and so sharing ideas, that's something that's really important to me. And part of that message was that in order to heal ourselves, we sometimes have to help others. So, just a brief thing, again, I'm not an astrologer, but the Chiron represents the wounded healer. And so in this lifetime, wherever our Chiron, whatever sign that's in, is a wound that we are trying to heal in this lifetime. And so for me, with mine being in Gemini, I have wounds around communication and speaking my truth. And so for me, I think that by helping others do that, and by me feeling so strongly that I want other people to speak their truth, it's helping me to do that, because I do believe in leading by example. So if I'm going to tell other people to do it, then I have to do it. And so I am just now, because this exact point of me doing this came up last night again. in people's cards. I did a live card pull for people. I was doing readings for people, and the teaching and learning card came up quite a bit because so that card is a 5 and a 7. So the 5, I believe, is very much around this, like speaking your truth, making change for yourself. And then the 7 being spiritual, like you need to speak your spiritual truth. So I do believe that this relates to Chiron as well. So even though I haven't actually looked up to see what if there is a number associated with Chiron, but I do think that this links in specifically for me at least, and the messages that I'm meant to bring through, because teaching and learning is, I don't even know again if I find the source for where I read that, but it was just in the idea that in order to heal this wound that we have, our Chiron, helping others with it helps us to heal ourselves. And I believe that in general, it goes both ways, where you are your own healer. So if you go to a Reiki healer, so if you come to one of, or if you participate in one of my group sessions, like what I have on Thursday coming up, or if you seek out your own session, you are the healer. I am the channel who is bringing the energy to you, following the guidance of your guides and mine to make sure that I can do the best that I can. But you're actually the one healing yourself, because I didn't like stalk you and tell you you needed this and like give that to you, because that's not right. It has to be coming from you. It's you making that choice. So keep that in mind, that it's your choices that help you with your healing. And so when you make the choice to help others, you're also healing yourself. And then when you heal yourself, you're healing others, because it's part, you are part of the collective. I don't know where that came from. That wasn't where I was going originally, but I do believe that very strongly. And I think, again, that this is very much with this 5 energy, because we know that the throat chakra in human design, especially, is around manifestation. I think that this is something that we have to think about, is that we all have blocks for communication and for manifesting. And it makes sense that the throat chakra would hold a lot of that. So, yes, there is the throat chakra, which is around communication, expression, and truth. And like I said, manifesting. And then actually the planet Mercury, which of course is associated with Gemini. So that's where I made that connection for myself with the Chiron, because my Chiron is in Gemini. And so there are a lot of great things about Gemini that we can really hold on to and try to move forward with for this idea of change. It's the sign of like intellect and curiosity. There's a lot of reason associated with it because of Mercury. And then there's also, of course, communication and also adaptation, being able to be open to new ideas and to not get too stuck on the ultimate, like, one truth. It's the idea that there could be many things and being open to learning new things. And I think we all really need that in order to make a collective shift. We all need to be open to new ideas and then sharing those ideas, that idea of communicating them. So, the intellect and curiosity is another thing that I associate with Gemini. I don't know if I said that already, but I think this idea that we all need to be lifelong learners and we all need to be constantly just curious. So when we even have an idea that we feel very strongly about as a truth, still being curious as to why we are so willing to hold on to that belief. Even if it's a good belief, like it's always good to keep re-examining and keep being open to new ideas, because like I'll even say, like, there's some spiritual beliefs that I've had that have shifted, that still will shift as I learn more information, because I'm always taking in information. And that's part of it, right? Is just being open to new information. It's also good to examine that information that you're taking in too, though, like not just fully trusting everything you hear, obviously. And that's where like the discernment, and there's a bit of shadow around it, because sometimes with this energy of like quick thinking, which is like Gemini's like the quick thinker, Sagittarius is more like long term, but Gemini is very quick. And sometimes that can be something that causes us to like leap to conclusions. And then sometimes we really just have a disconnect between the intellect and the reason with communicating that in a positive way, or in a way that is helpful to others. So sometimes we might hold on to that knowledge. That might be a shadow where we just want to have all the knowledge, but we don't want to share it. Or it may be that we're so stubborn that we're not open to new ideas. So that's where some of these shadows, like on the more intellectual side of it, comes in. And then just another like kind of fun fact is that Wednesday is the day of the week that's connected to Mercury. So for me, I kind of take that as just a little idea for planning my week, that Wednesdays, it's also the merchant, so like business things. But for me, that's my check in day for the week. It's halfway through the week, and then it's associated with Mercury. So that's a good time to check in and check your calendar. Look at what meetings you might have, what social interactions you have planned for the week, and kind of make sure that those are still feeling like they resonate with you. And then in tarot, the Hierophant is what is associated with the number 5. And I think with this, because it's kind of the reason I put this next to Mercury is because it's a very traditional sign. It's the teacher. So again, this idea of sharing knowledge and, like I said, teaching and learning being part of the healing process. It's also like the masculine, but I like to think of it as more of like the divine masculine, where it's this like more gentle side of it, as opposed to the emperor, which is a more strong authority type of figure. Human design, the profile, number 5, is the heretic. And I am a 5/1. So with this, there's a lot of ideas around being a mirror, having things projected on us. It's this understanding that people have energetically, that the 5-line profile is someone who will, save you. They're looked at as the person to solve problems. We know that if a heretic is usually someone who's sharing knowledge that people aren't ready to hear, or sharing it at the wrong time when it just seems inappropriate, and then you get labeled as the heretic, and then no one wants to hear anything you say. So that's why sometimes I hesitate to share my knowledge, even though like my other side of my profile is the investigator, where I'm always gathering knowledge. And I think that's where I do identify very much with that Gemini energy as well. But I always am hesitant of like when to share things. And sometimes I hold on to knowledge too long because I don't think I've investigated it enough to share. And that's something that I brought up yesterday, along again with that teaching and learning, where I spent all this time gathering the knowledge and I never feel like it's enough for me to be speaking about it. So I'm trying to work through that, where just sharing as I go instead of waiting until a certain point in the future where I'll never really know when I have enough knowledge. Like, what is enough knowledge to share, right? And so it's this idea of me sharing as I go, and then it gives other people the opportunity to share with me what they know. And then I gain more knowledge. So it's this ongoing teaching and learning. So as I'm teaching, I'm also learning. And so often people with the 5th-line profile will also feel like a responsibility to share this information with people and to share their truth that they've learned through acquiring this knowledge. And even just spiritual things that they discover, like, which is myself as well included, that it's like you feel a responsibility to share. Like you're receiving this information not just for yourself, but because it's something that is your contribution to the collective. And then in human design, we also see the number 5 in the gates. And I'm not going to talk too much about this, but the main takeaway that I had about the 5th gate, which is the gate of waiting, is related to that. The reason I'm bringing it up is because it's related to like knowing when to share, and the idea that there's like a rhythm and timing to everything. And so divine timing becomes a really big part of this gate. That's the energy I feel around it. And so like really trusting that and knowing that there is a correct time for things. It doesn't mean that you have to, again, like I said, wait forever, but just feeling like, yeah, no, I feel a responsibility to share now, and not waiting too long either, because there is a rhythm to things. And choosing, it's not us that know when the time is. Like the intuition is what we need to go with instead of logic. So instead of going into that logic side of the 5 in like the Gemini and thinking like, well, other people have shared when they've spent this much time acquiring this knowledge, versus I feel called through divine timing, like things are lining up at a point where I'm getting all of these spirit crumbs, and I do feel like people are waiting to hear this information, which is what has happened with this particular topic for me. I've known for a while, it's been coming up in a lot of my energy sessions and my card pull Fridays now, this idea of like the throat chakra and these shadows. So there's this idea in some beliefs that there are the four like physical elements like earth, air, fire, and water, but there's also spirit as another element that kind of runs between them all and keeps them all in alignment. And so even within that, like there's this 5 energy of like balance, which then goes back to the 14, right? This idea of balance in all things. The Hamsa symbol for protection. It is also based on like the 5 fingers of the hand. And I just bring that up because before the messages that came through for the general reading that I did at the end of the session, there was a card that came out about protecting yourself energetically. And so I do feel like this is kind of embedded in this subject, that in order to really feel our confidence, we need to also know that we're protected. I do have more on this topic and how this ties in with intuition, but I am going to split this into 2 episodes. So you can now listen to episode 16 to find out how I bridge the gap between the throat chakra and its shadows and how we move forward with intuition. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Spirit Crumbs. You can find me on Instagram for this podcast at Spirit Crumbs, or you can also find me at Concrete and Crystals for my own spiritual offerings and more tidbits about my own journey. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.